Most people misunderstand this Carl Jung idea. Don't be one of them. Everyone thinks they know what Carl Jung meant. They throw around words like shadow work, individuation, and higher self, as if they're trendy accessories for a spiritual wardrobe. But Jung wasn't writing Instagram quotes. He wasn't building a self-help empire. He was a surgeon of the soul, cutting through illusion, exposing the wounds we hide, and dragging the unconscious into the light where few dare to look. And here's the harsh truth. Most people today misunderstand his most important idea. And by doing so, they rob themselves of the very transformation they seek. Because individuation, the process of becoming your true self, isn't about feeling good, finding your purpose, or radiating high vibes. It's about rupture, descent, death and rebirth. It's about being torn apart by your own unconscious, so that you can finally meet the version of yourself that has never been conditioned by fear. If you've ever wondered why your inner work feels like it's going in circles, why the same patterns keep returning despite all the affirmations and journaling, this might be the reason. You're not doing it wrong. You may just be following the wrong map. Carl Jung's most misunderstood concept is this: individuation is not becoming something better, it's becoming something real. Not ideal, not perfect, not positive, real, whole, human, divine, broken, beautiful, all of it. But what do we do in the modern world? We treat shadow work like a checklist. We treat the self like a brand. We think integrating means deleting our flaws or hiding them behind self-aware language. But Jung warned, the unconscious doesn't care about how enlightened you think you are. It cares about truth, and truth will always find a way to surface, whether through peace or through chaos. To individuate, according to Jung, is to bring the unconscious into conscious awareness. Not just the good, not just the wise, not just the divine, but also the shameful, the angry, the primitive, the jealous, the insecure. It means seeing the masks you've worn to survive, and taking them off even when it feels like skin. It means confronting the parts of yourself that you swore you'd never look at again. And most of all, it means letting go of who you think you are, to become who you really are underneath it all. Jung called this process a kind of sacred breakdown, a confrontation between the ego and the deeper self. Not a cute alignment, not a weekend retreat, a psychic crucifixion. And until that happens, you're not individuating. You're just decorating your ego with spiritual wallpaper. One of the biggest traps Jung predicted, long before today's explosion of self-development, is the rise of what we now call the spiritual ego. That's the version of yourself that sounds wise, speaks in affirmations, and always seems centered, yet hasn't actually faced the roots of their pain. You might say all the right things. You might meditate daily. You might talk about energy, consciousness, archetypes. But if you haven't truly sat with your rage, your grief, your lust, your fear, your envy, without numbing, bypassing, or excusing it, then you're not individuating. You're dissociating. Jung warned of this. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Including, ironically, dread you. This is the awakening of the self, not the curated, socially acceptable version of you, but the totality of you. It feels like coming home and realizing you've never really lived there before. One of the key steps in individuation is what Jung called the collapse of the persona. The persona is the mask you wear to function in society. It's the identity you perform, the smart one, the spiritual one, the successful one, the nice one. We all have personas. We need them. But the problem arises when you mistake the mask for the truth. When you believe you are the persona and build your entire life around defending it. Jung taught that for individuation to truly begin, the persona must crack. And that can feel inside you. It's revealed through the world. The partner who challenges your control. The failure that shatters your pride. The friend who holds up a mirror to your denial. These moments are the work. They're not distractions. They are initiations. So the next time you feel like giving up on yourself or think you're regressing, you end up chasing a destiny that was never yours to begin with. You live someone else's myth instead of becoming the author of your own. And then there's projection, the mechanism that Jung considered both a defense and a doorway. We hear the word projection and assume it's a flaw, something to avoid. But for Jung, projection was sacred. Why? Because what you project onto others reveals what you've not yet integrated within yourself. You hate your boss's arrogance because it mirrors your disowned ambition. You're obsessed with someone's charm because it reflects the charisma you've buried. You resent someone's freedom because your own inner rebel is trapped beneath shame and duty. Jung wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." So instead of denying projection, use it. Trace it. Let it point you back to the parts of yourself waiting to come home. One of the most tragic misunderstandings of Jung's legacy is the way modern spirituality has turned it into a comfort zone rather than a catalyst for transformation. Shadow work has become aesthetic. Individuation has become ego enhancement. The self has become branding. But Jung's original intent was to shake people awake, to show them that the soul doesn't want to be decorated. It wants to be known. The real work doesn't feel cute. It feels disorienting. You cry more. You question everything. You lose parts of yourself that were never really you. But in that unraveling, something holy happens. You become honest. Not just in words, but in essence. You stop posturing. You stop performing. You stop trying to be spiritual and start being real. Individuation is inconvenient. It ruins plans. It disrupts careers. It exposes truths in relationships you were hoping would stay buried. But the soul doesn't care about convenience. It cares about coherence. It wants your inner world to finally match your outer one. It wants your actions to reflect your essence. It wants your words, your wounds, your wonder, and your wildness to all live in the same house. This is what individuation offers. Not comfort, not image, but integration. And yes, it costs something. It costs illusions. It costs certainty. It costs fitting in. But what you gain? Yourself. The you that existed before the world told you who to be. So if things are falling apart, if you feel lost, unmotivated, confused, don't panic. You might be closer to the truth than ever before. Jung believed that the psyche knows when it's time to evolve. And often, that evolution begins with a breakdown. The ego screams, something's wrong. But the soul whispers, something false is leaving. Let it leave. Let it burn. Let the ashes of who you thought you were become the soil for who you really are. But be warned, the ego won't let go without a fight. And the longer you resist the self, the deeper the shadow grows. So what happens when you ignore this call? What are the real consequences of misunderstanding Jung's work and spiritualizing your avoidance? That's what we'll face next. Carl Jung didn't write to make people feel better. He wrote to make them real. And when his teachings are misunderstood, when shadow work becomes a buzzword, when individuation becomes an aesthetic, when the self is confused with the ego, the result is more than spiritual confusion. It's psychological suffering. Because when you think you're doing the work, but you're really avoiding it with spiritualized language and half-truths, you don't just stay stuck. You get worse. You become fragmented, wearing masks of awareness while your unconscious quietly revolts beneath the surface. When the shadow is ignored or sugar-coated, it doesn't disappear. It becomes toxic. And here's how it shows up. You preach forgiveness while secretly seething with rage. You talk about letting go, but keep reliving the same wound. You claim to be detached while secretly craving validation. This is spiritual bypassing at its core, and Jung warned about it long before the phrase existed. He said, "The shadow is a moral problem. It demands self-awareness and moral effort. You can't bypass that. You can't positivity your way out of it. You must feel it, face it, integrate it. Otherwise, it leaks out sideways into relationships, addictions, projections, depression, and even physical illness. The body keeps the secrets the ego refuses to admit." Perhaps the most dangerous result of misunderstanding Jung is the creation of a spiritual persona, a new identity that feels enlightened, but is just as rigid as the one it replaced. You swap the mask of "I have it all together" for "I'm always conscious." But that's still a mask. Because if you can't admit when you're triggered, when you're afraid, when you're stuck or small or selfish or sad, then you're not free. You're just imprisoned in a new costume. Jung believed that true spiritual growth looks like deconstruction, not decoration. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the dark new. Not because others don't understand you, but because you've built a wall of language between you and real vulnerability." Jung's path didn't lead to disconnection. It led to deeper relationship, with yourself, with others, with life. But only once the masks came off. The final, and perhaps most devastating, cost of misunderstanding individuation is this. You reject your own self without knowing it. You mistake the ego for your center. You build your life around it. You confuse comfort for peace. You call numbing alignment. You label your patterns boundaries. You spiritualize your defenses. And in doing so, the true self, wild, sacred, luminous, never gets to emerge. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege isn't guaranteed. It's chosen, earned, fought for. And the moment you realize you've been walking in circles around your own soul is the moment you're finally ready to step through the fire. So if it all feels like it's falling apart, if you're no longer inspired by the spiritual content you used to love, if your old affirmations don't land, and your old goals don't matter, you're not lost. You're being cracked open. This is the death of the misunderstanding, the death of the surface-level path, the death of who you thought you had to be to become whole. And it's painful. It's lonely. It's confusing. But Jung knew, only through that death can the self be born. So what does it look like to finally get it right? To return to Jung's original vision and walk the path of true individuation with courage, honesty, and soul? That's where we go next. So now we arrive at the heart of it, not the watered-down interpretation, but the soul-deep vision Jung left behind. What does individuation actually look like when you strip away the language, the branding, the projections? It looks like this. You stop trying to be impressive. You stop trying to be right. You stop trying to become more spiritual, more conscious, more anything. Instead, you become honest. With yourself, with others, with life. You feel things fully. You speak truthfully. You sit in silence without needing to fix, change, or control. And slowly, what's false falls away. And what remains is you. Not the version of you you've performed, but the one that has always been becoming in the background of your life. The self, at the core of Jung's vision, is integration. Not transcendence. Not escape. Not eradication of the ego. Integration means letting all parts of you have a seat at the table. The ego and the shadow. The child and the adult. The sinner and the saint. The pain and the potential. You don't kill the shadow, you hold it. You don't silence the ego, you teach it. You don't erase the past, you give it meaning. Jung's path is alchemy, not amnesia. When you stop misunderstanding the process, when you stop decorating your wounds and start listening to them, something miraculous begins to happen. The soul returns. You laugh differently. You love differently. You create differently. You rest without guilt. You speak without fear. You walk into the world not to prove, not to perform, but to be. You meet life from the inside out. And suddenly, you're no longer afraid of breaking. Because you've already broken. And you've built something deeper from the pieces. Something real. Jung didn't promise bliss. He promised wholeness. And wholeness often feels subtle, easy to miss if you're chasing fireworks. Here's how you'll know you're actually individuating. You pause before reacting. You own your projections. You choose relationships based on depth, not drama. You recognize your old patterns and walk away anyway. You feel less certain, but more peaceful. You stop needing to explain your path to others. This is the slow return to soul. Not loud, not glamorous, but utterly transformative. You realize that individuation isn't found in mountaintop moments. It's found in the ordinary. Saying no when you mean no. Letting go of people who love the mask, not the self. A feeling your feelings before trying to fix them. Choosing presence over performance. A living with integrity even when no one is watching. This is the revolution Jung spoke of. Not a new personality, but a deep remembering of the self beneath all personalities. So if you've been confused, disillusioned, burned by the surface-level teachings, know this: the fire wasn't your failure. It was your initiation. Carl Jung didn't leave behind a path for the faint of heart. He left a path for those willing to go through the darkness to find the light. And now that you've seen the truth of it, the mess, the myths, the misunderstanding, you have a choice. Keep curating the image, or begin living the truth. The truth will set you free, but first it will break you. If you're breaking now, let it happen. If you're dissolving, let it fall. If you're questioning everything you thought you knew about yourself, good. That means the work is working. That means the old version of you is finally releasing its grip. That means the self is rising. So stop looking for signs. Stop asking for permission. Stop waiting to be ready. Start walking the path Jung actually left behind. The one that leads to wholeness. The one that begins right now. Subscribe to the Awakened Compass and join our membership to unlock the full journey within.